Hey Summoners, my name is Nathan Ng and welcome back to another ProGuides video. I know a lot of you guys have been asking for this, so I'm here to run you through this one. We're going to be ranking every single champion and every single role from hardest to easiest. Every single champion? There's like 150 League of Legends champions. You guys... Okay, for our question of the day, what champion, in spite of being easy, just doesn't seem that easy for you? For me, it is Vladimir. That guy kind of sucks. He's like a vampire, he sucks. Okay, not really, but it just doesn't really click for me. I'm just really bad at the game. Anyway. By the way, guys, I just want you to check out ProGuides.com if you haven't already. For those of you guys who are trying to climb and are serious about getting better at this game and in this season, make sure you check out ProGuides.com because your favorite pro streamers and pro players are there to help you coach and get better at League of Legends. And with that all being said, let's jump right into this video. First up, let's talk about some of our easy picks. We've got picks like Garen, Sett, Ornn, and Trundle. Champions in this tier list are very straightforward to play and they can do their job without a lot of insane mechanics. For being this easy, they sure are pretty difficult to deal with. Like my ex. Not gonna lie though, when I flash Q someone on Garen, I totally belong in a montage for that. On top of this, the gameplay for a lot of these champions is extremely straightforward. Tanks like Malphite, Maokai, or Ornn all play around these mid to late game teamfights. Their goal isn't to win lane, but it's definitely not a bad thing if you win lane. Without much effort, it's easy to know what your job is when you're playing one of these champions. Champions like Trundle, Garen, and Maokai also don't have any abilities that you have to aim. A lot of their power comes from the abilities or gameplay that you get for free. Trundle's R, Maokai's W, and Garen's E come for free essentially. Just don't accidentally root a minion as Maokai. Also, up in the next tier are champions that are moderately difficult. We've got picks like Darius, Mordekaiser, Rumble, Kennen, and Vladimir up here. Some tanks or juggernauts are up here as they're a little bit harder than Maokai. Actually, quite a lot harder. For example, Shen only has one ability that you have to aim, but it's a lot harder to land than a point and click ability, and there's also that taunt flash mechanic that you can learn as well. Although his abilities aren't very difficult to use as a whole, you have to be constantly watching the map once you're at level 6. There's a lot of responsibility that comes from playing Shen as you have to be ready to press R on a teammate within a moment's notice. They randomly get ganked, well maybe it's not your fault that they died, but maybe you could have carried the game with a single ultimate. We also have other champions who aren't extremely difficult, but still require passable mechanics to play well like Vladimir, Gnar, Kennen, Nico, and Quinn. Difficult champions in the top lane include Aatrox, Jax, Camille, Sylas, Vayne, Akali, and Lucian. All these champions have some characteristic that makes them a little bit difficult. Of the difficult champions, Aatrox and Jax are the ones that require the least mechanics. Instead, Jax's ability comes from the need for strong macro knowledge and patience, which you can all understand better with ProGuides.com. In many matchups, you can't win outright and you have to know when and how to farm it out until your item power spikes. You'll also have to minimize the amount of farm you'll miss with strong wave management and also understand which minions are the ones that you want to go for. With Aatrox, he's not super difficult, but his gameplay revolves completely around predicting his opponent's movements. There's just enough delay on his Q, especially on high latency servers like North America, and his opponents can try to outmaneuver it. The other champions on this list are more mechanically difficult than the other top laners. They have skill shots, require a lot of micromanagement, or just need to space themselves out in order to play effectively. Lucian and Vayne are especially volatile picks. In spite of being powerful when fed, these champions can easily run it down and become useless after a couple of mistakes, but completely annoying the entire time. The very difficult champions in the top lane are Fiora, Irelia, Riven, Gangplank, Yasuo, Jace, and Ryze. All of these champions require a lot of practice, solid macro play, and mechanical skill to play. Good reaction time, good aim, and some clutch split-second decision-making are all fundamental to their playstyles. For example, Riven requires you to utilize an animation cancel on her Q to speed up her basic attack animation. On top of this, something as simple as trading requires a solid reaction time as you rely heavily on blocking the damage you receive. All of these champions require a lot of farm to play successfully, so you'll need to know when to hit those side lanes instead of ARAMing every chance you get. That's enough for the top lanes though, let's talk about the junglers next. Alright, now let's start through those easy picks first. We've got a long list, but some notable ones are Master Yi, Shyvana, Warwick, and Xin Zhao. I mean, how can we not include the notorious Master Right-Clickers? Champions like these are extremely simple to play. They function, honestly, quite well regardless of what you do with your mouse and keyboard. A ton of these champions don't have any abilities you need to aim, and if they do, they practically land themselves. In terms of playstyle, these champions are extremely linear. Master Yi, Shyvana, and Nocturne are power farmers who are just trying to scale up and hit level 6. Champions like Rammus and Amumu are looking for those ganks and sick engages to get their team ahead. A champion like Xin Zhao is focused on ganking over and over again as he gets a free gap closer and knockup as long as you click on your target. Moderately difficult champions include Zac, Jarvan, Olaf, and even Ivor. These guys take a little bit more skill to play for sure. Zac, although he plays like an Amumu and Rammus, requires you to actually aim his E somewhat precisely. You also have to micromanage and keep an eye out for where your blobs land, as it is an essential part of your gameplay. Champions here are definitely a little more challenging to play. They typically have more abilities you have to aim or require more mechanics to play effectively. Jarvan is an essentially harder Xin Zhao. For example, as you actually have to line up your knockup combo. As a trade-off, you can potentially knock up more than one opponent. Difficult champions include Elise, Echo, Kayn, Graves, Kha'Zix, Kindred, Sylas, Taliyah, and Zed. All of these champions require a solid mechanical foundation to execute. Zed and Kindred quite obviously require a ton of practice. As a marksman, Kindred players need to be good at kiting and especially need to time their ults as well. Her ultimate is one of the ones that can throw fights just as easily as it can carry them. She's definitely not a champion you can learn after a single game, and you'll need a lot of experience with her. Champions like Echo and Elise require a ton of skill both mechanically and in terms of game knowledge to play. The reason is that these two are extremely potent diving champions. You have to know what all your possibilities are. In other words, you need to fully understand your limits. From there, you have a ton of options to work with, and you need to be able to choose the best one from those that are presented to you. Of course, we need to talk about the very difficult champions in the jungle. I hope these two don't come off as a surprise to you guys, but they're actually Lee Sin and Nidalee. Both of these champions require an insane, and I mean an absolutely ridiculous amount of mechanics to play, more so than any of the other junglers on this list. Whenever you watch a sick Lee Sin play or even a montage of them, subconsciously you know that part of the satisfaction you feel is directly due to how difficult some of these plays are to pull off. While in isolation or compared to other games, pulling off an insect play isn't the hardest thing. Recognizing an opportunity and making a split-second choice to act on it requires confidence as well as skill to pull off. Nidalee functions similarly. She's an extremely aggressive jungler who needs to be precise with her spears. You can't really make mistakes with Nidalee, as missing a crucial spear in an early game can easily cost you that one takedown that you need to snowball and carry the game. Nidalee as well as Lee Sin require a ton of matchup knowledge on top of their high skill floors. Enough with the jungle already, let's run it down mid. Alright, now let's get through these easy picks. The mid lane actually has a much more even spread in terms of difficulty. For the easy picks, we have Kassadin, Twisted Fate, Pantheon, Lux, Malzahar, Lysandra, Ornn, Galio, Annie, Nocturne, Sett, Garen, and Renekton. Sure, some of these guys aren't mainly mid laners, but they flex into the role pretty well, so they're definitely worth mentioning. It also goes without saying that you'd find champions like Annie and Twisted Fate in here. They're extremely beginner friendly and let you focus on all the other responsibilities that come with playing mid. While we mentioned Shen in the top lane as a moderate difficulty, we're placing Twisted Fate as an easy champion because his ultimate isn't really as stressful to use. Shen's ultimate provides a shield when casted, so you need to use it literally to decide the fate of one of your allies. Definitely don't want to let them down. However, Twisted Fate's ultimate is much more easier to use proactively, unlike Shen's. In contrast, you'll use Twisted Fate's ultimate in situations where you want to, instead of situations where your teammates want you to. Again, champions in this tier typically have very few abilities or the ones that are pretty easy to land. We've got Malzahar, for example, whose biggest contribution to the game is walking up to an enemy and pressing R. Next, let's talk about the champions in moderate difficulty. We have Diana, Fizz, Vladimir, Talon, Echo, Victor, Rumble, Veigar, Ziggs, Mordekaiser, Cho'Gath, and Swain. These champions are definitely a step up in terms of their mechanical requirements. Assassin picks like Diana, Fizz, and Talon don't require the most skill to play, but you definitely need to be able to land your abilities. Thankfully, they're not super difficult to hit. Generally, these champions have abilities that are a little bit harder to land, but require you to be a little bit more patient. Vladimir and Victor are great examples at this. They're not extremely difficult to play, except when it comes to Vladimir for me, but they're a little harder to survive with early on, since your main goal when playing them is to hit the mid to late game spike without losing too much early on. Difficult champions in the mid lanes are the ones like Zed, LeBlanc, Sylas, Ahri, Syndra, Zoe, Kiana, Lucian, Vel'Koz, Anivia, Xerath, Akali, Azir, Pyke, Aurelion Sol, and Taliyah. All of these champions have extensive amounts of abilities that you need to land on top of mechanical skills to pull off. For example, Xerath. You have to aim every single one of your abilities, so it's going to take a ton of practice to hit a point where you can successfully land most of them. A lot of these champions also need to roam to be effective. For example, Zed, LeBlanc, and Ahri are already champions that require solid mechanics to play, but you also need to know how to extend these leads to your teammates. Just winning lane isn't enough with these kinds of picks, and you'll usually fall off towards the later stages of the game, in the sense that it gets harder and harder to make those picks. Finally, the very difficult champions in the mid lane are Yasuo, Katarina, Cassiopeia, Orianna, Irelia, and finally Ryze. All these champions require insane amount of practice to play. Ton of movement, quick reaction, and aim are necessary. Orianna is a great example of an incredibly difficult champion to play because of her ball. She's quite literally unique in the sense that she's one of the few champions that has to micromanage something aside from herself. Unlike Syndra, however, Orianna literally cannot function without her ball. Her entire gameplay revolves around it. It is an extension of her character, and basically everything she does in the game is centered on it. Having to think about your own positioning on top of the positioning of your ball is a mental task that you won't really find anywhere else on the league roster. And with that being said, let's jump into the bot laners next. Unfortunately, it's a given fact that there aren't a lot of bot laners in the game. For our easy picks, we have Miss Fortune, Ashe, and Sivir. Marksmen in general have pretty high skill floor because of how squishy they are. So while easy champions here might not be easy for some players, they're easy comparatively to the other bot laners. Ashe, Miss Fortune, and Sivir might have simple gameplay patterns during the laning phase, making them one of the easiest to play. Miss Fortune is an incredibly powerful laner who hits an immense power spike at level 6 with her ultimate. Her teamfighting strength comes from well-placed ultimates, instead of solely kiting and dishing out consistent damage as well. Ashe's long range, ability to engage, and utility make her one of those who doesn't have to deal an insane amount of damage in order to be useful. Finally, Sivir's playstyle is extremely straightforward. You can push your lane over and over again, farm up, and finally group up with your team and press R. The hardest part about playing Sivir is aiming your Q and using your spell shield optimally, but most marksmen honestly dream of having access to one of those tools so you don't have to run cleanse. In the moderate difficulty, we have Jhin, Jinx, Senna, Xayah, Varus, Tristana, Draven, Twitch, Ziggs, and Heimerdinger. A lot of these champions have a heavy focus on their abilities. For example, Jhin and Varus. While the basic core concepts of playing marksmen are definitely important, a lot of their power instead comes from their abilities. They're also loaded with utility, like Ashe, so they can find ways to carry the games while they're not leading the damage charts. We're also placing Ziggs and Heimerdinger here because of how effective they are at pushing their waves. Although it does take a lot of practice to land their abilities, the fact that they can just push so effectively makes laning and scaling up a lot easier. For the difficult picks, we got Vayne, Aphelios, Caitlyn, Kalista, and Kog'Maw. At our very difficult level, we got Ezreal, Lucian, Kai'Sa, Yasuo, and Cass. All of these champions take an incredible amount of mechanical prowess to play effectively. The skill ceiling is especially high on picks that we consider very difficult. For example, we've got Ezreal. This guy needs to basic attack, believe it or not, but he also has to land his abilities. Ezreal is one of the hardest 1v9 champions in the game because of his mobility and long-range Q. He can single-handedly turn around teamfights or oppress an entire team by poking them out. However, doing this requires you to just know how far you can go without dying, landing your abilities, and making sure that your spacing is perfect so that you don't randomly die and lose your team the game. Other champions like Vayne and Kai'Sa have extremely high mobility, meaning that you'll have a ton of tools to work with. More to work with means that the expectations are also higher for you. You can't just pull the team didn't peel for me excuse as often with these champions as you usually have the tools to protect yourself. Good luck with that one on this meta though. Finally, let's wrap it all up with supports. Our easy champions are Soraka, Sona, Tahm Kench, and Maokai. Aside from Maokai, the basic gameplay themes of these champions are don't die and don't let your teammates die. I mean, come on, literally every champion follows these rules aside from maybe Tryndamere and Karthus. Soraka and Sona simply have to survive and spam their heals as much as possible. Admittedly, it's a little harder to survive on these champions than others, but most enchanter supports will die in a similar situation anyway. At least Sona has her ultimate to save herself, while Soraka players tend to run barrier. For the moderately difficult champions, you are required to land some more abilities or they require you to get in there to make some plays. Thankfully, picks like Nautilus, Leona, and Alistar basically get a hard lockdown for free. Leona's Q is a free stun, Nautilus's ultimate is a targeted ability, and doesn't have skill shots altogether. We also have many other enchanters like Lulu, Nami, and Karma in here because they have more abilities that you'll need to land. As a result, they definitely require some more practice to play successfully. Difficult champions are quite similar to the moderate ones, but once again require even more practice to play effectively. We've got Blitzcrank, Pyke, Yuumi, Morgana, Rakan, Brand, Zyra, Vel'Koz, Xerath, and Senna here. There's a ton of emphasis on landing your abilities with these champions, and they've also got a lot of them that you need to land. Well, aside from Blitzcrank and Yuumi, of course. Blitzcrank rides or falls over as a piece of junk based on whether he can land a single ability. You basically have to hone your ability to land a Blitzcrank Q to perfection to make the most out of him, as well as a pick in this journey that will definitely require some continuous practice and training. Yumi is also on our difficult list because of how fragile she is. Yes, we know that she doesn't seem very interactive since she literally sits inside of your ally, but one little mistake spells instant death for Yumi. When the ally she's on is about to die, she's got to think fast and smart as well. Or maybe she just needed to hop into someone else to begin with. There's a lot of little things that you need to think about when you're playing the jittery little cat. Finally, our very difficult champions for supports are Thresh and Bard. Honestly, their skill floors are not super high. You can pick them up and play them decently with about as much practice as any other champions require. However, their skill ceilings are excessively harder and higher than most supports because of how versatile their kits are. There are so many different ways to play and use both of their abilities. A Thresh Lantern can be used aggressively to get a teammate out of trouble, to sneak a Baron, or even shield an ally in clutch situations. Bard's ultimate can be used to stop a Rift Herald bash, hard engage, save your teammates from a Karth Assault, and so many other things. The possibilities are endless with these two, and you have to keep learning the various interactions they have with other champions as they are added to the game. That's gonna conclude this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you haven't already, make sure to check out ProGuides.com as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel because we're always trying to upload content for you guys. So if you guys also want to follow me on Instagram, it's just my daily plugin. You know, it's gotta meet my quota. It's at Nathan_ing. I'll see you guys on the Rift and in the comment section down below.